We're going to finish chapter 12. We started last week. I had every intentions of completing it, but these are long chapters. In my defense, 59 verses, that's a pretty big chapter. So chapter 13 is not nearly as long. It's about half the length of chapter 12. So we should be able to make up for lost time here. Trying to think where we left off. I think it was this passage here. Yeah. Let's go back. I'll reread this, and then we'll pour into the next section here. And he said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat, nor about your body, what you will put on. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Consider the ravens. They neither sow nor reap. They have neither storehouse nor barn, yet God feeds them. Of how much more value are you than the birds? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his span of life? If then you are not able to do as small a thing as that, why are you anxious about the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin, yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. But if God still clothes the grass, which is alive in the field today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O you of little faith? And do not seek what you are to eat and what you are to drink, nor be worried. For all the nations of the world seek after these things, and your Father knows that you need them. Instead, seek his kingdom, and these things will be added to you. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom." I love that saying. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to the needy. Provide yourselves with money bags that do not grow old, with a treasure in the heavens that does not fail, where no thief approaches and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So clearly Jesus shifts this. He shifts it to a kingdom mentality or mindset. I don't know if I did that. Sorry if I did. My big clunky fingers. I feel like Eric Most right now. But he shifts that to a kingdom. It's a kingdom perspective, and he's like, don't worry about the physical things because God's going to take care of you. And Eden just finished a book that Dakota lent to her, and Eden was telling me all about this book, and I forget the title of it because I'm terrible with those things. But it's written by a missionary who he went into countries where Christianity is illegal and the Bible is banned. And he's delivered, I forget how many hundreds of thousands of Bibles now. And he's crossed the border illegally with all these Bibles, and he hand delivers these Bibles to people. And he never has money. He never has transportation. He just fully puts his faith in God. And the interesting thing is that he said every single time that he came to the border, he would leave a Bible out in very plain sight. Because his mentality was, if God truly wants his gospel to go into this nation, I have nothing to hide and nothing to fear. God will take care of me. And he never once was arrested. They never stopped him. They never searched his vehicle. Every single time he crossed the border, and it was multiple different countries, every single time he crossed the border, they just waved him through with a Bible, very, very visible. Very interesting, and I can tell you, I don't have that mentality. And maybe mentality is not the right word. Maybe the right word is I don't have that kind of faith. To be able to do that and to put, in my opinion, put your whole family at risk. Because if you're arrested, some of these countries, you may not get out for a really long time. I mean a really long time. In China, they don't play games. They don't mess around. If you're peddling the Bible in communist China, good luck. Good luck talking yourself out of that one. And so he knew this going into that. I mean, he was fully aware. It's not that he's naive. He was fully aware. But he read these scriptures, and he said, if I really believe that God is true, and God is able, and God is faithful, then I have nothing to hide. I have absolutely nothing to hide, and I need to lean into this idea. Sell your possessions and give to the needy. Most of us don't just sell things that we have and give that money to the poor. We accumulate things. Yesterday, we just filled an entire dumpster. Now, a lot of this was just stuff that's been kind of collected over the years that my siblings have collected and dumped out at Mom's place. I don't know why they made her field a dumping ground, but we filled an entire 30 cubic foot dumpster full of all this stuff. I mean, heaping full. And I could have easily filled 2 dumpsters yesterday. And it just reminds me of stuff like this where God is saying, get rid of all this stuff, simplify your life, and give that money to people who actually need it. Give it to the poor. Now, you don't have to do all these things. You don't have to do these radical things. I look at the storm cleanup. There's a huge need right now in Somerset. And most likely Berlin and Shanksville and even down over the mountain towards Ligonier. I'm guessing that as widespread as this was, there is a lot of damage everywhere. People can volunteer time. I went last night, and I'm not using this as me as an example, but I dropped Cameron off at a friend's house that was up the top of Franklin, where my sister Mandy lives, and it just looks like carnage everywhere. And I brought my chainsaw with me because I knew they'd been hit really hard. And they had several big branches down that fell off of oak trees. And so I just cut them up into manageable sizes where the kids could haul them off and throw them on a big pile. But they had one big one that fell, and it landed on a fence and did damage to it. And it was big. And I was able to cut that up and get some firewood for them out of that. And it took me a total of 9 minutes. I have a pretty good chainsaw, and I've been cutting my whole life. It was actually fun for me. I was nerding out a little bit, but it doesn't take much to do things like that for people. And so many people worry, and they're so anxious about all the things of this life. And Jesus is like, don't worry about it. Store up treasures in the heavens that won't fail. No thief can steal the treasure that you build up in heaven. Nobody can come and take that from you. But everything else, our house, anything is fair game. That stuff can go and vanish very quickly. Okay. Stay dressed for action and keep your lamps burning. Now remember, he just talked about the thieves, right? Store up for yourselves treasure in heaven where thieves don't come in and take that. They don't destroy. Very next thing he says, stay dressed for action. Keep your lamps burning. Be like men who are waiting for their master to come home from the wedding feast so that they may open the door to him at once when he comes and he knocks. Clearly he's talking about when Christ comes again. Judgment Day, be ready for it. Be prepared. Don't let your guard down. Don't get caught up in all the worries about life. Don't get caught up in all the things that you have to buy and all the things that you have to get in order, because what really matters is being prepared for Judgment Day, period. Blessed are those servants whom the master finds awake when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will dress himself for service and have them recline at table, and he will come and serve them. All right, so the master, he's painting this picture. The master's been away. The master comes back, and he finds the servant ready. He's dressed for service. He's ready to go. The master doesn't have to wake up the servant. He doesn't have to motivate him to work. You know, it's interesting because there's kind of a Western cultural thing where we constantly need to be motivated, where we're like, well, think about it in the church world. We'll talk religion here for a minute. I've heard so many of my friends say over the years, that church just isn't filling my cup. It's not for me. And I keep coming back to this idea. I don't even know what that means. That they're not filling my cup, which the translation is, I'm just not really feeling it. You know, this whole Christianity thing, this whole waking up at 8:30 in the morning and going to church and like giving up a chunk of my day, I'm just not really feeling it. The church isn't really filling up my cup. It's not pouring into my cup. So why should I go? And I think it's such a gross response, but it's a cultural thing that we experience here in the West, where we feel like people need to motivate us, even at work. People are like, well, I'm only getting paid, whatever. Why should I? I worked with a guy when I worked at an oil shop down south, and one of our job descriptions was to empty the trashes. It was an oil changing place, and then directly attached to that was a car wash that our boss owned. And we had to go around routinely, like any time that we had downtime, we had to go around and empty the trashes. Well, it was gross, and you can imagine like all the garbage, all the sticky, nasty sodas that people, like I don't know why, it's like I picture people opening the top of a full soda can or soda bottle and just like dumping it in the garbage can. Like it's just all this sticky stuff and bees. You wouldn't believe the amount of bees at these garbage cans. And so all of us would just kind of naturally rotate and take turns. And we had this guy who refused to do it. He's like, I got hired to change oil. And we're like, actually, you didn't. You got hired to do your job. And he was adamant. He was like, and his reasoning was, I'm not getting paid enough to handle that kind of garbage. Exactly. That's what we all told him. I'm like, when I go around, first of all, I'm grateful I have a job. I was making like 11 hours at the time, $11 an hour, which I don't care, whatever. It wasn't great pay. It wasn't even good pay. There was no benefits. It was, at best, mediocre pay. But I was thankful to have a job. And when I went around and emptied the trashes, I would empty the trashes, but I didn't like getting stung by bees. I didn't like touching nasty, soupy trash. So I would take the cans after I dumped them in the dumpster, and I would walk them over to the car wash, and I would power wash them with soap and like rinse them off, and then I would return them. And this guy wouldn't even empty the trash cans. So Jesus is making this point. He's like, be ready. Like when the master comes back, and our boss was gone all the time. And my thing was when he rolled in, and this was ingrained growing up on a farm. It was ingrained in us. Never let us catch you standing around. Ever. And that included like when we broke down. That was before the day of cell phones. We'd be out in the field, and they would say, when we come back, if you're broken down, you better have a wrench in your hand. You better be trying to figure it out. And that was so ingrained in me. They weren't mean about it. They weren't rude about it. It was an expectation. And their point was, always be ready when the boss comes back. Never let the boss catch you doing this when you're on the clock. And that has always stuck with me. So Jesus is making that point. You know, if the master comes back and he finds the servants awake, he dresses himself for service, has them recline at table, and he comes and serves them. If he comes in the second watch or in the third and finds them awake, blessed are those servants. But know this, that if the master of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have left his house to be broken into. You also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. I never want to be not ready for Jesus to come back. I never want to be standing around as a Christian. And again, this ethic needs to be instilled. That expectation needs to be instilled in all of us. That we don't want to come back, Jesus comes back and we're sitting there twiddling our thumbs saying, we're not going to carry the trash out because it's not in my job description. I know a lot of Christians who refuse to do a lot of different things. They won't serve in different areas, and they're like, it's not me. I just don't want to do it. I don't want to be that person. I want to bend over backwards and do everything I can to serve other people. I have to brag on our young people a little bit this morning. I'll embarrass them since they're not here. They went over this morning. Dakota made cookies, and the girls walked over and delivered them to the Episcopal church right across the street from us, because they said, those are our neighbors. And they're like, we've been here for almost a year, and we've never walked over and introduced ourselves and said, hey, we're your new neighbors. And so they went over and had like a very pleasant conversation with some of the people there, and they're like, they're really lovely people. It's those kinds of things. It's so cool and inspirational to see the young people who, they get these scriptures. They get it. They understand it, and they live it. And it's really inspiring. Peter said, Lord, are you telling this parable for us or for all? And the Lord said, who then is faithful? Who then is the faithful and wise manager whom his master will set over his household to give them their portion of food at the proper time? Blessed is that servant whom his master will find doing so when he comes. Truly, I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. All right, so Jesus flips that, and he's like, okay, who is the master calling to be his manager? What do you think of when you think manager? Why would somebody be hand-selected to be a manager? What are some of the characteristics or traits of somebody?
Skills that would be available to them.
Yeah, availability. What else?
Their favorite.
Their favorite. I wasn't expecting that one. I sense a little hostility in there somewhere. Sometimes, they pick their favorite one. It's sad, but it's true. I think of like, if a boss is looking for a manager, they're looking for somebody who's reliable, somebody who shows up, somebody who's not afraid to go out and empty the garbage cans just because they're the manager. It's really interesting. This is another thing too. I love this trend. A lot of young people get a bad rap, and I research this stuff all the time because I think it's so important. It's not a cliche. Like, kids really are the future of everything. They're the future of this nation, future families. They're going to be reproducing and having families. It's really important to understand where young people are coming from and how they're shifting the culture within, especially within this nation, but I mean even worldwide. And they get a really bad rap, and like I hear things like this all the time. Well, young people, they're lazy, they don't want to show up, don't hire them, they're not reliable, on and on and on it goes. It's not true. It's not true at all. What's fascinating, and Natalie has experienced this at her job, and she does a phenomenal job at catering to this. She gets asked a lot by new young people to come show them how to do it. And she's like, I don't get this. Like, I never wanted my boss to be around. I was like, leave me alone. Don't talk to me. Don't breathe in my direction. Like, I just want to do my work. I want to do my job. Stay out of my way. And I grew up, like most of us grew up in that generation, right? Where it's like, we're just independent. We want to do the work. We want to get the job done. We don't want somebody breathing down our neck. Well, the young people are asking their bosses to stay with them. And it's really interesting. Something they do a lot is they confide in her about everything. Like everything in their personal life. Everything. And she's like, Now, she'll joke, she'll come home sometimes and be like, what, am I their therapist? And I'm like, yeah, kind of, you are. Like young people, they look at their bosses not as a manager or somebody who's over them. They want to look at their bosses as a peer, as somebody who can mentor them, not just with the job, but through life. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And so a lot of older people get frustrated with that, and they're like, come on, like, I don't want to have to baby all of my employees. You're not babying them. It's really interesting. That model in the Bible, it's used all throughout the New Testament. It's called discipleship. There was an expression in the first century, and Ray Vander Laan is the one who I learned this from, and I didn't even realize it. But there's an expression called walking in the dust of the rabbi. And that expression was very, very common in the first century. And what it meant was that when there was a rabbi, you would follow so closely to that rabbi. I mean, at all times. You never left the backside of that rabbi. You were always behind. You were always within one step of almost tripping on the heels of the rabbi who was in front of you. And so walking in the dust of the rabbi means, it was an expression that meant as they're walking, the dust didn't have time to settle before you walked through the dust that the rabbi kicked up. You were that close to the rabbi. We don't do that anymore. And so the younger generation is asking, hey, can we follow you? Can we be mentored by you? Can you take time? Can you take 5 minutes and let me just pour my heart out about the bad day that I had yesterday? Because right now, my mind is not on this job, and I need it to be. And I just need to talk to somebody. I just need to get this off my chest. I think that's still encouraging. It's not that young people don't want to work. It's that they want to work meaningfully.
They want someone who cares about them.
Absolutely. Pretty cool stuff. But Jesus shifts this. Peter's question is this parable for us or for everybody? And then he goes into this thing about the wise manager, the faithful and wise manager, and saying, blessed is that servant whom his master will find doing so when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. In other words, that managerial position for Christians is really for everybody. It's kind of Jesus's interesting way of saying, don't think too highly of yourself, Peter. Everybody qualifies to be a manager over the kingdom. And the people who are qualified are the people who show up. They're the people who deny themselves, take up their cross daily, and follow me. And they're going to be blessed. God will set them over everything. Truly, I say to you, he will set them over all his possessions. But if that servant says to himself, my master is delayed in coming, and begins to beat the male and female servants, and to eat and drink and get drunk. All right, so picture this. The manager, he's like, all right, the boss isn't coming. And then they think really highly of themselves. I picture this in church leadership, right? Church leaders who get a big swelled head and they're just going to start bossing people around. The master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, at an hour that he does not know, and will cut him into pieces and put him with the unfaithful. And that servant who knew his master's will, but did not get ready or act according to his will receive a severe beating. But the one who did not know, that is, who didn't know his father's will, and did what deserved a beating, will receive a light beating. In other words, somebody who messed up, somebody didn't know Christ, and Christ comes back, they get a light beating. But the one who knew, you know the Father's will, you know what God wants of you, you know what God expects of you, and you did nothing, or you did something bad, he says you're going to be cut up into pieces and you're going to be thrown out. He's going to put you with the unfaithful. That's sobering. That is really sobering to me. And I guess the question is, how do we know what God's will is? I did a sermon on this like many years ago, and I should do one again, or several, like maybe do a series. Like, how do we know what God's will is? It's kind of an interesting concept. Eden's a new driver. She just got her permit recently. And she's really struggling with that, that one stick beside the steering wheel that signals where you're going. Yeah. I'm like, use it. Use it, use it, use it. Well, and then she comes up with these scenarios. She's like, in this situation, like stop, accept. Pennsylvania loves our stop, accept, right turn. There's one right there. I can look at it right now. Stop, accept, right turn. She's like, I don't have to use it at a stop, accept, right turn because I'm staying on the main road. That's her argument. My thing is, even if you technically don't have to, use it. Let people. Do you want people to guess what your intentions are? That's how people get into accidents. When somebody's across from you at another intersection and they have to guess whether you're just barreling straight through a stop sign or whether you're going to make a right turn, I'd rather be 100% of the time, I would rather signal to people and let them know what my intentions are. That's how I have like 2 million miles accident free. That's how it happens.
How many other people that are driving that road actually know that sign's there?
Exactly. So I made that point too. I'm like, all right, let's come from the opposite direction. A good one is when you come down into Shanksville, the post office is on your right. Right directly across from you, there's a stop sign. Right below it, accept right turn. So people turning right to cross that bridge into Shanksville, they don't have to stop. And so when we come down into town, we've watched, with her driving, we've watched people go right around that turn, no turn signal. I'm like, how does that make you feel? Yeah, that's right. You don't want to guess. And so the good news for us is when it comes to the Father's will, like he signals to us. He lets us know what his intentions are. We don't have to guess. We don't have to yield to God in some weird, mysterious way because we don't really know what his intentions are, what his will is. God is very clear. God is very clear what his will is. Here's one for you. The will of the Father is this, that no one be unsaved. That's pretty simple. God's will is that all people come to him. God's will is that everybody come to him. So what does that mean for us? As the master, God doesn't have to give us this big long laundry list where we're like, okay, I went through the first 173 things, but now I did them all and I don't know what to do next. God literally gives us one thing, and it goes back to what Charles said before, do what's right always. Well, what does that mean? In relation to what? Everything that aligns with God's will. Saying that person at the cash register or this waitress who just totally screwed up my order, or the person at McDonald's that gave me, it must be somebody else's order because literally nothing is right that I ordered, which happens a lot. They get busy and they mess up the orders constantly. The way that you treat that person, the way you respond to that person, the way that you interact with that person, if that's not in alignment with God's will, if you're mistreating that person or telling them off or putting them in their place, imagine if Jesus comes back and he watches you in the middle of raising your finger. And I witnessed somebody do this before. They MF'd a McDonald's worker. And I was watching in disbelief, and I knew this person. And they were in their own little world. They were seeing red. And were literally using F words. And then they turned around, and I was just like, I looked them dead in the eyes. Like, this is interesting. And then they were like stuttering and like, this happens all the time. And it's like they're trying to excuse their behavior because they knew they got caught. Which, whatever. I'm not there to judge that much. Yeah, I know. Yeah. No, it wasn't DP. Sorry to burst your bubble. And it was nobody from this congregation, so that's good news. But right, it's interesting. Some people lose their minds, and then when they get caught, they see somebody they know. All of a sudden, they backpedal, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not normally like this." Yeah, you actually are. Like it's,
Because if you weren't like that, you wouldn't do that.
exactly. So yeah, it's very telling what we do in private. It's very telling. So Jesus, this is his response, and I love it. Verse 48, but the one who did not know and did what deserved a beating will receive a light beating. Everyone to whom much was given, of him much will be required. And from him to whom they entrusted much, they will demand the more. So if God entrusts us with a certain level of things, he's going to set that bar really, really high. He expects a lot, but he also gives us a lot. And we've got to be responsible. As Christians, we have got to be responsible with what God gives us. Did God give you a house? Use it responsibly. Did God give you a car? Use it very responsibly, meaning in relation to other people. Are you willing to give people a ride, or do you, I can't, or I don't want that person riding in my car. I've heard people say that. I don't want that person riding in my car. I'm like, really?
Well, I'm guilty of that.
Well, we've probably all done it at some point. Yeah.
That's the only reason I won't give somebody a ride.
Yeah. That's one where you just grab the smoke out of their hand, throw it out the window. By the way, it's not wrong to set down ground rules. All right. I came to cast fire on the earth, and would that this is Jesus speaking here, and would that it were already kindled. I have a baptism to be baptized with. He's talking about his suffering, being immersed in suffering. And how great is my distress until it is accomplished. Do you think that I've come to give peace on earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. For from now on, in one house there will be 5 divided against 3, and 2 against 3. They will be divided, father against son, and son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. Now in Matthew's gospel, this is Jesus' speech right before he sends out the disciples 2 by 2 to go into all the towns and villages. This is how he prepares them when he says, I'm sending you out as sheep or lambs in the midst of wolves. And then he says this, you're going to witness father rise up against father, mother against father, or mother against daughter. You're going to see these kinds of things. Be prepared for it. He also said to the crowds, when you see a cloud rising in the west, you say at once, a shower is coming, and so it happens. Yesterday, it didn't take rocket science to look at the sky and say something nasty is coming. I mean, the sky, there was this eerie feeling just looking at the sky. You could see it. You could feel it. You could feel the air changed. Just the whole atmosphere was very eerie, and you didn't need the weather alert on your phone to tell you that something bad was about to happen. When you see the south wind blowing, you say there will be a scorching heat, and it happens. You hypocrites, you know how to interpret the appearance of the earth and the sky, but why do you not know how to interpret the present time? Why do we not know that God is in our presence? You know, I heard the thing before. I forget the name of the author. He's a theologian, but he said, you know, when people show up to church, they're like relaxed and feet propped up and yawning. He's like, we ought to come into worship with a crash helmet on, ready for God, because God is present. His presence is all around us. Not that it's only here in the church building, but he's like, when we worship, there's a heightened expectation, and God's Spirit is moving through all of his people. All of us have the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. We ought to wear a crash helmet and have an expectation that something powerful is happening in our midst right now. And I love that. A lot of people don't know how to interpret the times, and they walk into church buildings and they're like, they're constantly watching their watches. Like, is it over yet? Jesus is saying, don't be a hypocrite. Know how to interpret the time. Why do you not judge for yourselves what is right? As you go with your accuser before the magistrate, make an effort to settle with him on the way, lest he drag you to the judge, and the judge hand you over to the officer, and the officer put you in prison. I tell you, you will never get out until you've paid the very last penny. Again, he's talking about the kingdom. He's talking about the Father. The way that we treat each other in that act, it's the being in McDonald's and, MF and the worker, the judge is going to show up at some point. And so are we doing these little petty things against each other, or do we settle our disputes and we all just hold hands and walk through the kingdom together?
I just wish people would think when you go to do something like that, put yourself in their shoes before you go jumping on them.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. A little bit of empathy goes a long way. All right, we're out of time. We're going to stop there. Thank you all, and we'll see you in a few minutes.